Here's a concerning question I have for you. I wanted to get your insights on this. I didn't think anything of Justin Jefferson's performance last Sunday, but apparently a lot of other people think that there's like something brewing underneath, like saying worst game he's ever played. There's got to be something going on. Is he injured? Is he disgruntled? I mean, I saw some people on social media like, man, he's doing this the AJ Brown thing, but just at a quieter level. Like, is there anything to make of what happened on Sunday with Justin's performance? And, like, is he happy, unhappy? Like, what's going on with all this?
I would say this, Ben, and I'm not inside Justin Jefferson's head, but it's natural to be frustrated when you've just had all these stops and starts in the season and you're coming off a really good game in Detroit, albeit one where you didn't throw the football a ton. And when they did throw the football, other than the early touchdown, it mostly went to Jalen Naylor, not to Justin Jefferson. But then to have, that type of a showing and, 8 false starts and just not even being able to snap the ball and then, take the interception that Malachi Starks picks off, it's like, that's a heave into double coverage, and Jefferson really doesn't even have an opportunity to make a play on the ball. Like, if I were out there running those routes, I'd be frustrated too. I do not believe it's Justin Jefferson, wants to get out of here. Justin Jefferson doesn't like J.J. McCarthy. That was a bad game against a Ravens team that's playing better and better on a Vikings team that, still to this point, I don't believe they've won 2 games in a row. It's every time they've won a game, they've come out the next week and not looked very good. There's a long way to go. You still got half the season left. You got to clean up some of the things, that are happening with the cadence, the snap count, whatever it is. Because, jumping offside once at home, having a false start at home is bad. 8 times is, completely below the bar. And so I'm sure that's something they've been drilling this week. And there's no doubt that Kevin O'Connell wants to get the football in Justin Jefferson's hands. He's the best weapon on a team that's got a bunch of weapons, and none of those weapons were used as effectively as you would like last week.
Tom, I saw your guy, Brian Flores, on a list of potential Giants head coaches next year. We've talked about Flores now for a couple of years, about how awesome he's done here with the Minnesota Vikings, and eventually he'll get another chance. Do you think the Giants make any sense for Flores this offseason?
I don't know that that's the best fit. I certainly believe that, the minimum a tiebreaker, if not a prerequisite, would be having previous head coaching experience. And of course, Flo had that in Miami. The Giants' recent history and the need to get Jackson Dart going would suggest that they're going to hire somebody with an offensive background. If I'm not mistaken, the last non-offensive coach that they hired to be the head coach in New York was Bill Parcells, and that's a long, long time ago. Do they go that direction again? Joe Shane, the GM, is leading the search. You've already heard other names connected, Bill Belichick. You can't rule any of these out. I would be, fairly surprised if that were the hire. As of now, Steve Spagnuolo's got a history with the organization as well. Certainly there are, various connections. Brian Flores is 2 steps away from Bill Parcells via Bill Belichick. If I had to say right now, and again, they're really nowhere yet on the search, I would say that my guess would be it's somebody with an offensive background in that job. But, Flo will be in the mix for interviews again. We'll probably have the usual 6, 7, 8 openings, and we'll see, if the cards fall his direction this time.
Tom, non-Vikings question. Is the head coach of the Packers really coaching for his job with how bad the offense has been the past few games?
2 weeks ago saw us, the Packers are in position for the number 1 seed, and they're 5-1-1. They had back-to-back poor offensive performances at home. I was as surprised as you were that after the game, Matt LaFleur is being asked about his job, that people are writing columns and blog posts about his job. The reality is this. So the facts are these. They got a new CEO and president in Ed Policy who's there. Matt LaFleur and Brian Gutekunst, the GM, both have 1 year left on their contracts. They're both signed through 2026. You're not going to have a lame duck situation. And so the belief would be after this season that you're going to do contract extensions with both of those guys and carry on into the future. Matt LaFleur's won 2/3 of his games as the Packers head coach. Obviously, a couple of those were with Aaron Rodgers and MVP, then developing Jordan Love. They got into the playoffs again last year. They're still tracking to be in the playoffs this year. There's no question the offense has to perform better, but think about the issues that they've had from a depth perspective over these past couple of games. And I get it. Everybody has injuries within the league, but they lost Tucker Kraft in that Panthers game. That is the best offensive player. You can argue Josh Jacobs too, but certainly, Tucker Kraft's been a difference maker for that team. He's out for the season. You already don't have Jaden Reed, who's been a top receiver for you. Matthew Golden was inactive on Monday night because of a shoulder injury. Romeo Doubs suffers a chest injury. They got a guy named Bo Melton, who's a wide receiver who got moved to corner in camp, which you can probably ascertain what at least one of those reasons is. Bo Melton was the number 4 corner for the Packers, who didn't even suit up a 5th on Monday night. And then because Dobbs gets hurt, he's basically now the 3rd wide receiver. And so it's like, 4th and 8, and they're throwing. How can they drop that ball? Well, that's Bo Melton, who hasn't been practicing receiver. Well, how are they misaligned and it wipes out a big play? That's Bo Melton, who probably hadn't lined up on that play in practice all week. Some of that stuff is coaching. Some of it's personnel. Some of it's, bad luck with the injuries and just, the shortages and the adjustments you have to make within the game. I think Matt LaFleur is one of the best coaches in the NFL. The track record suggests that. He's a really good play caller. They got the Giants this week. Maybe they get the 1 week pop with, Jameis Winston and Mike Kafka taking over. If I were guessing, I would say that this is a game where the Packers are able to get back on track. But, they're not getting Tucker Kraft back. They've got other, injuries and personnel shortages. Let's see how they're able to adjust. I do think that this is a week where the Packers offense should bounce back.
All right, let's stay within the division and the team that we are playing this week in the Chicago Bears. And if you listen and all the people around Chicago, they think this is it. They have turned the corner. They truly believe in what Caleb's doing. You look at their totality of their work, and not a lot of quality wins there. So, what do you make of the Bears? Are they for real, or are they still building something and not quite there yet?
I think Ben Johnson's done an unbelievable job. It shouldn't surprise anybody. Definitely shouldn't surprise the Bears, who gave him a boatload of money to help bring him to Chicago. They've not been, from an offensive perspective, they haven't been putting up, Star Wars numbers. This is not the 2024 Lions offense that was setting scoring records. But they don't have the personnel and they don't have the time on task. What they've been really, really good at is situationally crunch time. We've seen the Bears rally back from big deficits. We've seen them just make the clutch plays late. We've seen Ben Johnson pull a rabbit out of a hat from a play calling perspective. And he does have Caleb Williams playing the most controlled football we've ever seen Caleb play. Everybody knows when he's flushing to his right and chucking the ball sidearm across his body, he does rare stuff and he can move and he can scramble. But it's the playing in rhythm that Caleb Williams has really grown through the course of this season. And this is not, just like any other first-year head coach, both on offense and defense. They're not perfect. They don't have perfect scheme fits at every position. Even in Detroit, when Dan Campbell was taking over there, granted, that first year they had Anthony Lynn as the play caller. That didn't work, so Dan Campbell did the same thing he just did last week again, which was take over the play calling duties himself. But Ben Johnson really got integrated. It wasn't until year 2 and the back half of year 2 that they started playing at that elite type of level that we've seen from the Lions. Ben Johnson already has won more games through the first half of his first season than Dan Campbell did in his first year and a half as the Lions head coach. It speaks to the work that Ben Johnson and Dennis Allen on the defensive side have done to flip that thing in a short period of time, get guys believing, and that's culturally something, Ben, there's losing that gets ingrained in the culture, and that can take time to get that mindset out of the building. In very short order, they're finding ways to win games. Now, do I think that this is a Bears team that's primed to make a Super Bowl run this year? That's probably asking a lot. In many regards, they've overachieved so far this season, but they are playing good football. And this, the Bears, from what they've shown so far, they're not going to beat themselves. If anything, they're a team that is uniquely equipped right now to exploit your mistakes if you try to give the game away late. They've done it repeatedly this season, which is why they're sitting there with 5-6 wins and, in a position where, they might be able to sneak into the playoffs in Ben's first year.
Tom Pelissero, brought to you by our friends at Bell Bank. Real quick, quick Twitch answers, if you wouldn't mind, on both these teams. How good, in reality, in your opinion, are the Colts and the Seahawks?
Colts are playing really well. Luan Rumo's done a really good job with not perfect personnel. They've had issues at every level of that defense. They made a big swing, obviously, on the Sauce Gardner trade. He played well for a guy who got there on a Tuesday, had to learn a new defense, study a different team, fly to Germany, and start on Sunday. Sauce was unbelievable. Would have been even better if he had that pick six in the game. They've been really good offensively. They're obviously defined by Jonathan Taylor. We'll see if they can sustain that into the postseason. They just stumbled a couple weeks ago against Pittsburgh, but they've been really good. The Seahawks, I think, have not gotten enough credit. And as John Schneider is, wisecracked on when he's appeared on the Insiders before, it's like, we're just hiding up here in the Pacific Northwest. Nobody talks about us. We're never on national TV. That is a really, really good football team. Mike McDonald, who everybody said was brilliant, going back to when he was in Baltimore and at the University of Michigan, he's got a defense that doesn't have a bunch of household names playing at an elite level. And if anything, there's comparisons to be made to the 2013 Seahawks team, which also was really young. And of course, they made a run and ended up winning the Super Bowl over the Broncos that year. If anything, this Seahawks team throws the ball better than that Seattle team ever did. They'd turn Russ loose in the fourth quarter and make a couple big plays, but with the way that Sam Darnold is playing and that receiver core with Jackson Smith and Jigba, now bringing in Shaheed, Cooper Kupp's healthy again. They got to run the football probably more efficiently. I'm sure that's a big emphasis for them. But the Seahawks, in a year where I don't know that there's a clear-cut NFC favorite. Plenty of people are going to say the Lions. Plenty of people, despite the bumps in the road, including on Monday night the Eagles have had, will say them. The Seahawks look like they can compete with anybody, and that's not a team I want to see in January.
Tom, before we let you go, who's the bobblehead that's standing on its head behind you?
That's Amon-Ra St. Brown. That was let me grab it here.
That's pretty cool.
This is a pretty good one. It's actually it's a bobble leg, really. Okay. But that was his celebration where he stood on his head and flipped over. I thought that was a pretty good giveaway. And then the Vikings didn't let him do anything in that game. So that was I guess the lesson learned is if someone's giving away a bobblehead with someone's touchdown celebration, just focus on not letting that guy do any celebrations whatsoever. It's a good plan.
That's perfect.
Hey, one quick question, Tom. This sentence is barely used, but is this a must-win game for the Chiefs this weekend?
I don't know about must win. I certainly think that the position that they've put themselves in, every win helps because the division is so competitive, and the Chargers have played at the level that they have recently, despite all their offensive line issues. The Broncos are finding their way. I mean, they're a 7-win team, even though you watch them too. It's kind of like the Eagles, where the offense, you're like, man, when are they going to find the pace? The Chiefs are still right in that thing. They've been, a division champion every year. They've had home games every year. They have very, very rarely faced a road where they've got to go away from Arrowhead and win playoff games. Being a wild card would be something new for Patrick Mahomes. It would make the road that much harder. But, they're another team that's getting healthier. Obviously having Rashee Rice back has been huge. I wouldn't say must win, but absolutely. This is not a year where you're going to coast because the division's bad and go 10-7 and win it. This is probably going to take 12 wins to have a home game and to be even in the mix for the number 1 seed. And so it's big for the Chiefs, no doubt.
All right, where can people watch you? Where are you going to be this weekend?
This weekend, we've got the Madrid game early morning on NFL Network. So I will be on the early pregame show, 6 a.m. Central Time, doing news from my basement, not from Madrid, unfortunately.
Darn, man, that's too
I will
bad.
be right here. Other people are in Madrid. I am right here. I will be at the Vikings-Packers game the following week at Lambeau Field. But the Insider's back tomorrow night. And every Tuesday, Wednesday, Friday during the regular season, 6 p.m. Central.
Awesome.
Sweet.
Thank you, Tom.
Thanks, Tom.
Appreciate you, man.
Thanks, Phil.